ॐ ज्ञानतिमिरन्दस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्तस्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सरस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषशून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम Ram Ram Hare Hare. Hare Krishna everyone, we welcome you all for today morning reading. We're reading from chapter 4 of Bhagavad Gita. We had discussed the translations of verse number 5 to verse number 9, but we're going to discuss the purports. We're going to read out the purport. Very, very important purports. Text number 5, translation. The personality of God had said, many, many births you and I have passed. I can remember all of them, but you cannot, O subduer of the enemy. Purport. In the Brahma Samhita, 5th chapter, verse number 33, we have information of many, many incarnations of the Lord. It is said, Advaitam achyutam anadim anantarupam adyam purana purusham navayavanam cha vedeshu durlabham adurlabham atma bhakto Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. I worship the Supreme Personality Godhead Govinda, who is the original person, absolute, infallible, without beginning. Although expanded into unlimited forms, he is still the same original, the oldest, and the person always appearing as a fresh youth. Such eternal, blissful, all-knowing forms of the Lord are usually not understood by even the best Vedic scholars, but they are always manifest to pure, unalloyed devotees. It is also stated in Brahma Samhita, 5th chapter, verse number 39. So the first verse was explaining that how Lord is the source of all incarnations, and second, how he appears in different incarnations. Now, in this verse, which is there, more specifically, it is mentioned how he is a source of various incarnations. There is Avatar and there is Avatari. So Krishna is Avatari. Ramadi Muti Shukala Niyamena Tishan Nana Avataram Bhuvaneshu Kintu Krishnaha Swayam Sambhavat Paramaha Pamanyo Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. I worship the Supreme Personality Godhead Govinda, who is always situated in various incarnations such as Rama, Narasimha, and many sub-incarnations as well, but who is the original personality Godhead known as Krishna. In the Vedas also, an important line, and who incarnates personally also. So all the incarnations in this world appears through Kshirodaksha Vishnu. However, unlike Krishna, when Krishna comes, he personally appears from Goloka Vrindavan. That's the point. In the Vedas also it is said that the Lord, although one without a second, manifests himself in innumerable forms. He is like a Vaidurya stone, which changes color yet remains same. All those multiforms are understood by the pure and unalloyed devotees, but not by a simple study of the Vedas. Vedeshu dullabham adullabham atma bhakto. Only atma bhakto, only my devotees can understand the dullabh, the knowledge of Vedic scriptures. Devotees like Arjuna are constant, very important point. Devotees like Arjuna, so this verse talks about where Krishna tells Arjuna, Arjuna, you and I have appeared many times. Only difference is I remember everything, but you don't remember. So question can be asked, was Arjuna present when Lord Shri Krishna spoke Bhagavad Gita at the first place, as mentioned here, to Sun God? That is what Prabhupada is writing. What was Arjuna doing then? Devotees like Arjuna are constant companion of the Lord. And whenever the Lord incarnates, the associate devotees also incarnate in order to serve the Lord in different capacities. Arjuna is one of those devotees. And in this verse, it is understood that some millions of years ago, when Lord Shri Krishna spoke Bhagavad Gita to the sun god Vivaswan, Arjuna, in a different capacity, was also present. But the difference between the Lord and Arjuna is that the Lord remembered the incident, whereas Arjuna could not. That is the difference between the part and parcel living entity, and the Supreme Lord. Although Arjuna is addressed herein as a mighty hero who could subdue the enemies, Parantapa, he is unable to recall what had happened in his various past births. Therefore, a living entity, however great he may be in the material estimation, can never equal the Supreme Lord. Anyone who is a constant companion of the Lord is certainly a liberated person, but he cannot be equal to the Lord. The Lord is described in the Brahma Samhita as Achyuta, infallible, which means that he never forgets himself, even though he is in material contact. Therefore, the Lord and the living entity can never be equal in all respects. Even if the living entity is as liberated as Arjuna, although Arjuna is a devotee of the Lord, he sometimes forgets the nature of the Lord, but by the divine grace, a devotee can at once understand the infallible condition of the Lord. Whereas a non-devotee or anyone cannot understand this transcendental nature. Consequently, these descriptions of the Gita cannot be understood by demoniac brains. Krishna remembered acts which were performed by him millions of years before, but Arjuna could not, despite the fact that both Krishna and Arjuna are eternal in nature. We may also note herein that a living entity forgets everything due to his change of body, but the Lord remembers because he does not change his body. That's the point. So logically, Prabhupada is speaking here. So why do we all forget? Even if Arjuna is a pure devotee of the Lord, yet he forgets. Why? Because we undergo change of body, but Lord never undergo change of body. So we remember. Everything in relation to him is spirit, whereas a conditioned soul is different from his material body. Because the Lord's body and self are identical, his position is always different from that of the ordinary living entity, even when he descends to the material platform. Which means when the Lord descends, he is not like us. He is He, absolute. But we, despite of whatever transcendental position we may have, we acquire the body of modes of material nature. The demons cannot adjust themselves to this transcendental nature of the Lord, which the Lord himself explains in the following verse. So please mark this purport for yourself. And anyone has to ever question you about the fact that, oh, Rama also appears as human being, Krishna also appears as human being. What is so special with them and us? What's the distinction? What's the difference? Please read out this purport. Or else you can memorize the points Prabhupada gives in this purport for your answer, for you to give a rebut to that question. Text number 6. We are reading the translation purport because we yesterday discussed the Sanskrit. Although I am unborn, my transcendental body never deteriorates. Although I am the Lord of all living entities, I still appear in every millennium in my original transcendental form. Very, very important purport. The Lord has spoken about the peculiarity of his birth. Although he may appear like an ordinary person, he remembers everything of his many, many past births, whereas a common man cannot. If someone is asked what he did exactly at the same time one day earlier, it would be very difficult for a common man to answer immediately. He would surely have to dredge his memory to recall what he was doing exactly at the same time one day before. And yet men often dare claim to be God or Krishna. Just because we're talking about forgetfulness of what we have done yesterday, a simple tip or trick to remember what you did yesterday is to have a schedule. If I ask you, Krishna Chandra Prabhu, what were you doing 6:50 a.m. IST? Oh, you were part of a yogi program? Simple. So when we have things on the schedule, what we did at 4:30 in the morning, you don't have to, every 4:30 in the morning for the last whatever years you have been practicing, we are attending morning program, hopefully, I assume so. But like that, So you see Bhaktivinoda Thakur, many of these great personalities had a very fixed schedule, what they would do. And that really simplifies the life. You should try doing that. Of course, if you think your life is simplified, it's simplified because we have got a lot of things organized. Because a lot of time brackets in out of 24 hours is already fixed. 10 o'clock, go to sleep. 4 o'clock, wake up. And 4:30 to 9 o'clock program. Then I prasadam. And then life becomes unorganized. From 10 to 10. Then you do whatever lila you have to do. In that also, if you can organize yourself, mind will be very much empty. Mind will be, all the trouble that we cause to ourselves is between that 10 to 10. Whatever we do, garbar shabar, that affects our rest of the time. Like that. If we can organize that also, it'll be fantastic. All right, let's move forward. The Lord says that he appears in his own body. He does not change his body. as a common living entity changes from one body to another. The conditioned soul may have one kind of body in the present birth, but he has a different body in the next birth. In the material world, the living entity has no fixed body but transmigrates from one body to another. The Lord, however, does not do so. Few lines before, in other words, few lines below, yeah. Krishna appears in this material world in his original eternal form with two hands holding a flute. He appears exactly in his eternal body, uncontaminated by this material world. Although he appears in the same transcendental body and is Lord of the universe, it still appears that he takes his birth like an ordinary living entity. His body does not deteriorate like a material body. Just like Krishna was, at the battlefield of Kurukshetra, was around 89 to 90 years old. He still looked like a 16-year-old man. So when our, the Shinaji Prabhu, what was his name before, from Bombay? Desai, Mr. Desai, Andy Desai, back in Bombay, when he went to meet Prabhupada, he was already a follower of one Mayavadi. What is the name? Chinmananda Swami. So Chinmananda Swami said, "You are God, I am God." And Mr. Andy Desai, a young entrepreneur, businessman, highly educated from world-class university. So he came and said to Prabhupada, Swamiji, you say, or Prabhupada, you say that Krishna is God, but my spiritual master says, you are God, I am God, everyone is God. So that point of time, the back and forth discussion, Prabhupada said, all right, if your spiritual master is God, then ask him, why is he growing old? Because Krishna never grew old. Krishna was always 16-year-old. And if your spiritual master is God, then he should not grow old. So when Andy Desai went and asked, so my dear spiritual master, I have a question for you. So he'll go and ask question back and forth. You went and asked, my spiritual master, or my dear spiritual master, I have a question. If you say you are God, then why are you growing old? Can you guess what did Chinmaya Swami said? This is my Leela. So he came back to Prabhupada and he said to Prabhupada, my spiritual master says this is Leela. Prabhupada said, he's a rascal. Ask him to come and meet me. I'll show him his Leela. Then when again it did happen, he didn't agree. So then Prabhupada said, okay, go and ask him. I am willing to believe he is the supreme God if he can lift Govardhan. So when Andy Desai went, the Chinmaya was fed up by then. He said, no, I cannot lift. I cannot stop from growing old. And then Mr. Andy Desai decided to surrender to Prabhupada. He said, yeah, Prabhupada is correct. This is wrong. So this is the point here. But astonishing ever, he never ages beyond youth. At the time of the battle of Kurukshetra, he had many grandchildren at home. In other words, he is sufficiently aged by material calculations. So that's a point Prabhupada mentions here. He is same, unborn, eternal. Few lines below. Factually, his appearance and disappearance are like the very beautiful, very important point. How do we understand Krishna's appearance and disappearance? Factually, his appearance and disappearance are like the sun's rising, moving before us, and then disappearing from our eyesight. When the sun is out of sight, we think that the sun is set. When the sun is before our eyes, we think that the sun is on the horizon. Actually, the sun is always in its fixed position. But owing to our defective, insufficient senses, we calculate the appearance and disappearance of the sun in the sky. And because Lord Krishna's appearance and disappearance are completely different from that of any ordinary, common living entity, it is evident that his eternal, blissful knowledge by his internal potency and is never contaminated by material nature. The Vedas also confirm that the Supreme Personality Godhead is unborn, yet he still appears to take his birth in multi-manifestations, like that is mentioned here. If we go a few lines below, the word Maya or Atmaya, Sambhavami Atmamaya, refers to the Lord's causeless mercy. According to the Vishwakosha dictionary, the Lord is conscious of all his previous appearance and disappearance, but a common living entity forgets. He is the Lord of all living entities because he performs wonderful superhuman activities while he is on the earth. Therefore, the Lord is always the same absolute truth and is without differentiation between his form and self, or between his quality and body. A question may now be raised as to why the Lord appears and disappears in this world, which is explained in the next verse, text 7 and text 8. Wherever there is a decline in religious practice or descent of Bharata and predominant rise of irreligion, at that time, I descend myself. So Prabhupada in the beginning talks about the word Srajami. So Srajami traditionally means creation. Prabhupada says, in this connection, it's not that Lord's body is created, because Lord is eternal, which has been discussed in the previous two verses. Therefore, in the fourth line in the Prabhupada writes, therefore Sajami means that the Lord manifests himself as he is, or the Lord appears on a schedule, namely at the end of Dwapar Yuga of the 28th millennium of the seventh Manu in one day of Brahma. He has no obligation to adhere to such rules and regulations. Why? Because Swarat, fully independent, because he is completely free to act in many ways at his will. He therefore appears by his own will whenever there is a predominance of irreligiosity and disappearance of true religion. Now, very important point Prabhupada makes. What is his dharma? What is his religion? You know, who decides what is religion? What is a religion? When Prabhupada talks about principles of religion are laid down in the Vedas. Any discrepancy in the matter of properly executing the rules of the Vedas makes one irreligious. Dharmam tu sakshad bhagavat pranitam. In the Bhagavatam, it is stated that such principles are the laws of the Lord. Only the Lord can manufacture a system of religion. The Vedas are also accepted as originally spoken by the Lord himself to Brahma from within his heart. Therefore, the principles of dharma or religion are the direct orders of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. These principles are clearly indicated throughout the Bhagavad Gita. The purpose of the Vedas is to establish such principles under the order of the Supreme Lord, and the Lord directly orders at the end of the Gita that the highest principle of religion is to surrender unto Him only and nothing more. So, in other words, Bhagavad Gita is a law book. It teaches us how to live peacefully and following the laws of this world or of this nature. And same is the purpose of Vedic scriptures that teaches us what are the laws of this creation, how to live harmoniously with each other, with the higher beings, etc., etc. But Bhagavad Gita takes us to another level, where it brings us to the ultimate purpose of Vedic knowledge. The ultimate purpose of Vedic knowledge is not to live harmoniously in this world, life after life. The ultimate purpose of Vedic knowledge is that Prabhupada is making a point here: Sarva Dharman Parityaja Mahamekam Sharanam Vraja. Give all principles of religion and surrender to Krishna. That is the ultimate purpose. The Vedic principles push one towards complete surrender unto Him, and whenever such principles is disturbed by the demonic, the Lord appears. Then comes the next discussion. Now, next point Prabhupada makes about, question can be raised. Buddhaji is said to be incarnation of the Lord, or Buddhaji himself appeared and he disobeyed the Vedic knowledge. He discarded the Vedic knowledge. That is the point Prabhupada talks about it. So, I mean, in any ways, in this next few lines, Prabhupada makes a point that Buddha had appeared in order to stop the nonsense. In other words, on the name of Vedic knowledge, people were killing innocent animals. There was a lot of corruption that had happened in the Brahminical community at that point of time. So the misuse of knowledge was happening. In other words, just like Lord Shri Krishna had appeared to reinstate Parampara system through Arjuna. So similarly, what chain of line was broken at some point of time in the history between Treta and Dwapar Yuga, as soon as Kali Yuga began, within short span of 2,500 years, the disciplic line was broken again, because of which this knowledge was misused. So then Buddhaji came, a Lord incarnated Buddha, to reinstate principles of religion by abolishing Vedic knowledge. Then Adi Shankaracharya came, he established Vedic principles of Vedic knowledge by not talking about the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which means the conclusion of what is the ultimate purpose of Veda? Sarva Dharma and Pratyaya. So, our Adi Shankaracharya did not discuss about the ultimate purpose, but he spoke about the purpose, about Vedic knowledge, and he said, well, you can become the Lord. And then we had Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya, Nimbakacharya, and many others, and followed up to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. They came and established the ultimate purpose of Vedic knowledge. So you see this whole progression, how it happened. So it took effectively close to 4,000, something about 2,500 years ago, or prior to that, the disciplic line was broken again, because of which the knowledge became contaminated. And it took almost 1,500 years to re-establish the disciplic line. And that disciplic line was re-established when we had teachers like Ramanujacharya, Madhvacharya who appeared. which appeared 800 years before, 800 to 600 to 800 years before. So for the time of Buddha, 2500 years up to 800 years, the knowledge was, half-hearted. There was not full knowledge. So it took a long time to reestablish the principles. That's the point is mentioned here. Then the next point, a few lines below in the same purport, it is not a fact that the Lord appears only on Indian soil. Many times question asked, oh, why Lord appears only in UP? Ramji, Krishnaji, you have Nemasharanya. You name all the places you'll find in Uttar Pradesh. Forget about India only. Many of the places. So Prabhupada says, why? People ask sometimes. Prabhupada says, he can manifest himself anywhere and everywhere. And whenever he desires to appear. And each and every incarnation he speaks as much as a religion as can be understood by the particular people under their particular circumstances. But the mission is the same, to lead people to God consciousness and obedience to the principles of religion. Sometimes he descends personally, sometimes he sends his bona fide representative in the form of his son, servant, or himself in some disguised form. Now, Prabhupada talks about the last final thing. The teachings of all incarnations are one and same. The principles of the Bhagavad Gita were spoken to Arjuna, and for that matter to other highly elevated persons, because he was highly advanced compared to ordinary person of the parts of the world. 2 plus 2 equals 4 is a mathematical principle that is true in the beginner's arithmetic class and in the advanced class as well. Still, there are higher and lower mathematics. In all incarnations of the Lord, therefore, the same principles are taught, but they appear to be higher and lower in varied circumstances. The higher principles of religion begin with the acceptance of the 4 orders and the 4 status, Varnashram Dharma. The whole purpose of the mission of incarnation is to arouse Krishna consciousness everywhere. Such consciousness is manifest and non-manifest only under different circumstances. And now we come to the 8th verse. So, why does Lord appears? When he appears, whenever there is a rise of religion. And why he appears? To protect his devotees, to deliver the pious and to annihilate the miscreants, and to establish the principles of religion. Lord appears millennium after millennium. Purport. So, the first part of the purport talks about who is a sadhu. Sadhu, according to Bhagavad Gita, is the one who is in Krishna consciousness. Who's not a sadhu or who's a dushkriti is the one who rejects Krishna consciousness or obedience to Lord Shri Krishna or to the laws of nature, like that is talked. Now, let's go in the middle of the purport. You will find a word, but the Lord especially descends to appease his unalloyed devotees who are always harassed by the demoniac. So Lord does not have to come to kill the demons. Any of his energy can do that. But Lord comes to please his or appease his pure devotees. The demon harasses the devotee even though the latter may happen to be his kin. Example of Prahlad Maharaj. Similarly, example of Kamsa and Devaki. They were brother and sister, but Kamsa tortured like that. So Lord Krishna appeared primarily to deliver Devaki rather than kill Kamsa. But both were performed simultaneously. Therefore, it is said here that to deliver the devotee and vanquish the demon miscreants, the Lord appears in different incarnation. Srila Prabhupada quotes Krishna Das Kaviraj Goswami Chaitanya Charitamrita, and he writes, Srishti hetu ye murti prapanche avatare sei Ishvara murti avatara namadhare mayatita paravyome savaravasthana Vishwe avatari dhare avatara nama. The avatar, incarnation of Godhead, descends from the kingdom of God for material manifestation. And the particular form of the personality Godhead who so descends is called an incarnation or avatar. Such incarnations are situated in the spiritual world, the kingdom of God. When they descend to the material creation, they assume the name avatar. Avatar. But who is the avatari? The source of all avatar? Eth cham sakalha pumsa krishnastu bhagavan swayam. So, next paragraph. There are various kinds of avatars. Purusha avatar, Guna avatar, Leela avatar, Shakti avatar, Manvanta avatar, and Yuga avatar. These are the 6 kinds of avatars. All appearing on a schedule all over the universe. Can you imagine? One who is Swarat also has a schedule. Interesting. How much we insignificant fellows need a schedule to organize our life. Prabhupada writes, they appear on schedule all over the universe. Imagine if Lord didn't had a schedule. How much, he will have unnecessary tension, anxiety. Now, when should I go? When should I not go? The mind will be disturbed like this, but he has a schedule. Lord Krishna is a primeval Lord. That is what has been talked about, and all of them appears for particular purpose. Last paragraph. The Lord says that he incarnates himself in every millennium. This indicates that he incarnates also in the age of Kali. Very important. Oho, Satya, Treta, Dwapar, Kali. So who is the Kali avatar? As stated in Srimad Bhagavatam, the incarnation in the age of Kali is Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who spread the worship of Krishna by the Sankirtan movement, congregation chanting of the holy names, and spread Krishna consciousness throughout India. He predicted this culture of Sankirtan would be broadcast all over the world from town to town, village to village. Lord Chaitanya is the incarnation of Krishna, the personality Godhead, is described secretly but not directly in the confidential parts of the revealed scriptures such as Upanishads, Mahabharata, and Bhagavatam. The devotees of Lord Krishna are very much attracted by the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya. This avatar of the Lord does not kill the miscreants, but delivers them by his causeless mercy. Text number 9 and text number 10 now. So, now we have understood the difference between the Lord and the living entity. This is a very important section, very important section. We have understood so far the difference between the Lord and living entity. Now, what is the advantage if we understand the divinity of the Lord? What happens? That is being addressed in the 9th verse. One who knows the transcendent nature of my appearance and activity does not, upon leaving the body, takes his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna. So Prabhupada makes the point that how liberation is very easy. Just by understanding Krishna, you become liberated. Just by knowing the divinity of Krishna, you become liberated. You don't have to perform penance and austerities for life after life. That's the point. In the middle of the purport, right? The impersonalists and yogis attain liberation only after much trouble and many births. Even then, the liberation they achieve, merging into the impersonal Brahmacharya, the Lord, is partial, and there is a risk of returning to this material world. But the devotee, simply by understanding the transcendental nature of the body and activities of the Lord, attains the abode of the Lord after ending this body and does not run the risk of returning to this material world again. So Prabhupada is quoting Advaitam Achyutam, which we already read like that. Eko deva nitya leenanurukto bhakti vyapi hridi antaratma. The one Supreme Personality God is eternally engaged in many, many transcendent forms in relation with his unalloyed devotees. The Vedic version is confirmed in this verse of the Gita personally by the Lord. He who accepts this truth on the strength of the authority of the Vedas and of the Supreme Personality Godhead, and who does not waste time in philosophical speculation, attains the highest perfection stage of liberation. Simply by accepting this truth on faith, one can without a doubt attain liberation. The Vedic version, Tat Tvam Asi, I am that, or I am you, is actually applied in this case. Anyone who understands Lord Shri Krishna to be supreme, or who says unto the Lord, you are the same Supreme Person, the Personality Godhead, is certainly liberated instantly. And consequently, his entrance into the transcendental association of the Lord is guaranteed. Tam eva vidadvati mrityumeti nanya pantha vidateyanya. One can attain the perfect stage of liberation from birth and death simply by knowing the Lord. And there is no other way to achieve this perfection. Shweta Ashvatara Upanishad. That there is no alternative means that anyone who does not understand the Lord is surely to be in the mode of ignorance, and consequently he will not attain salvation simply, so to speak, by licking the outer surface of the bottle of honey, or by interpreting Bhagavad Gita according to mundane scholarship. Such empiric philosophers may assume very important roles in the material world, but they are not necessarily eligible for liberation. Such puffed up mundane scholars have to wait for the causeless mercy of the devotee of the Lord. One should therefore cultivate Krishna consciousness with faith and knowledge, and in this way attain perfection. And the last verse in the pep talk by Lord Shri Krishna from verse number 5 to verse number 10, which was to answer Arjuna's question, how do you remember, how do I believe or how do I understand that you spoke this science to Sun God? Text number 10, translation, being freed from attachment, fear and anger, being fully absorbed in me and taking refuge in me, many persons in the past became purified by knowledge of me, and thus they all attained transcendental love for me. So here discussion is about on raga, bhaya and krodha. Very important purport. All these are 5-star purport. I would request all of you to please read it out few times just to get a comprehension. As described above, it is very difficult for a person who is too materially affected to understand the personal nature of the Lord. Generally, people who are attached to the bodily concept in life are so absorbed in materialism that it is almost impossible for them to understand how the Supreme can be person. Such materialists cannot even imagine that there is a transcendental body which is imperishable, full of knowledge, eternally blissful. In the materialistic concept, the body is perishable, full of ignorance, and completely miserable. Therefore, people in general keep this same bodily idea in mind when they are informed of the personal form of the Lord. For such materialistic man, the form of the gigantic material manifestation is supreme. Consequently, they consider the Supreme to be impersonal. Why they come to an impersonal conclusion? Prabhupada is giving a beautiful reason for that. He's explaining the psychology behind it. Like that. For such materialistic man, yeah. And because they are too materially absorbed, the conception of retaining the personality after liberation from matter frightens them. Too materialistic absorbed, which means too much bodily conscious, and the body is a source of misery. So for them, this whole idea that after liberation also you can have a body frightens them. You get the whole point? When they inform that spiritual life is also individual and personal, they become afraid of being persons again. So they naturally prefer a kind of merging into impersonal world. So who are these people who get attracted to impersonalism? These are the highly frustrated people who are frustrated from their sickly body. They're highly frustrated people who have had actual love failures or been kicked by their mother and father or the people in general who have been betrayed in relationship. So what they want, naiti naiti. I don't want anyone, anything, not even this body. These are the people who get attracted to impersonal ideology. Generally, they compare the living entities as the bubbles of the ocean, which merge into the ocean. That is the highest perfection of spiritual existence, attainable without individual personality. This is a kind of a fearful stage of life devoid of perfect knowledge of spiritual existence. Furthermore, there are many persons who cannot understand spiritual existence at all. Being embarrassed by so many theories and by contradictions of various types of philosophical speculation, they become disgusted or angry and foolishly conclude that there is no supreme cause and that everything is ultimately void. Such people are in a diseased condition of life. Some people are too materially attached, therefore do not give attention to spiritual life. Some of them want to merge into supreme spiritual cause, and some of them disbelieve in everything. Being angry at all sorts of spiritual speculation out of hopelessness. This last class of men take to the shelter of some kind of intoxication, and their affective hallucinations are sometimes accepted as spiritual vision. Prabhupada is speaking about the hippies right now. I mean, this is true for all of us, but I'm just saying at this point in time. One has to get rid of all 3 stages of attachment to the material world. Negligence of spiritual life due to raga, fear of a spiritual personal identity, that is bhaya, and the conception of void that arises from frustration in life, anger. To get free from these 3 stages of material concept life, one has to take complete shelter of the Lord, guided by the bona fide spiritual master, and follow the disciplines and regulated principles of devotional life. 3 things: take complete shelter of the Lord, under the guidance of bona fide guru. Second and third, follow strictly the rules and regulations. The last stage of devotional life is called bhava, transcendental love of Godhead. And how one attains it? The whole process given about the different steps, consequent steps in bhakti, starting from ado shraddha tadha sadhu sango tha bhajana kriya tato anartha nivrati syat tato nishtha ruchis tataha atha shakti tato bhava tatha prema vidanchati sadhakanam ayam premna pradurбhave bhavet kramaha. So I'll leave this part of purport as a homework for you. The 9 stages of bhakti life are described, beginning from Shraddha, Sadhu Sangha, inspired in the association of Sadhu Sangha. Then we take to devotional practices, that is Bhajana Kriya, which begins our Anartha Nivritti, freedom from unwanted desires and bad habits, which brings us to the platform of determination, confidence, nishtha, steadiness, and that leads to ruchi, attraction. Then asakti, which is the 8th stage, you become attached to the Lord, and devotional principles, and then prema, you are in mad, you are in complete love of Lord. This is what is being described. These are the 9 stages of progression. And now we come to the last, now I'm going to go to another section. Our time is up, so I'll just make a point. So 11th, 12th, and 13th verse talk about how this transcendental knowledge destroys all misconceptions. So 3 consequent verses talks about 3 potent misconceptions. What are that? Let's take a look. I'll just briefly speak about the Sanskrit, tell you what is a misconception, and we'll close for today. Text number 11. ये यथा मां प्रपद्यन्ते तां तथैव भजाम्यहं मम वर्तमानुवर्तन्ते मनुष्यः पार्थ सर्वशः. ये यथा मां प्रपद्यन्ते. Prapadante means surrender unto me. Maam prapadyante. Ye, as they surrender unto me, tam tataiva bhajamyam. Accordingly, I reciprocate them. Bhajami aham, aham, I bhajami. I reward them accordingly. Mama vartmanu vartante manushya path sarvasha. Everyone follows my path in all respects. Which means knowing, unknowingly, everyone is following Krishna's path. Even atheists are following instruction of Krishna. Any guess what instruction of Krishna atheists are following? Sarva dharman parityaja. Give up all religion. Yes or no? Even atheists are following all instruction of Krishna. Everyone follows. Some know, some do not know, and some despise. That's the only point here. So now very important point, the misconception this verse clarifies. Now people say, every path, you take any path, ultimately goal is one. No, not like that. Krishna says, as you surrender to me, I award you. If one takes a surrender of Krishna with an idea of merging in him, then he merges. He does not get bhakti. So that clarifies here. Text number 12. Kangshanta karmanam siddhim yajanta iha devataha shipram hi manushe loke siddha bhavati karmaja. All gods are same as the Supreme Lord. No. It was the first time Lord Shri Krishna speaking about devatas. No, that's not fact. What Krishna says here, कांक्षंत कर्मणाम सिद्धिम, इच्छा रखते हुए अपने कर्मों में सिद्धि सफलता प्राप्त करने के लिए ये जनता ही देवता अलग अलग यज्ञ के माध्यम से अनेक अनेक देवताओं की पूजा पाठ करते हैं. राइट? We want a job, we go to temple, we do worship Ganesh ji, विघ्न विनाशक, like that. क्षिप्रम ही मनुष्य लोके सिद्धिर्भवति कर्मजा, और जल्द ही उनको उस सफलता भी प्राप्त हो जाती है इस जगत में through their furtive activities. So this was the seed verse which will be discussed in length in 7th and 9th chapter about the relationship between Krishna and Devatas. So Prabhupada will explain more on this. Text number 13. Another misconception that people have, the caste system is terrible, horrible. It should be abolished. No, text number 13 debunks that idea. Chaturvarnyam maya shrishtam gunakarma vibhagashah tasya kartaram apimam vidhi kartaram apvayam. Chaturvarnya. Chaturvarnyam, varna, ashram. Varna means occupation, ashram means social life. Spiritual order, social order is varna. Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. And the spiritual order is brahmachari, grahastha, vanaprastha, sannyasi, ashram. This system of society, social division, or the system of living harmoniously within the society is created by Maya Shishtam. Shishtam is created. We already saw the use of word Srishti before. It's created by me. And on what are the preconditions of how the system works? It works on your character and competence. Guna and karma. Guna refers to your conditionings. And karma refers to your past activities. So I'll tell you tomorrow what it means by character and competence. Tasya kartaram apimam vidhi kartaram avyam. Hey Arjuna, although I'm the creator of the system, you should know that I'm yet the non-doer, being unchangeable. 3 very important verses. Please read out as a purport for yourself, as a homework for today. And tomorrow when we meet, we'll discuss more on it. Of course, we'll read out. If I have to make 1 or 2 points, I'll make it. All right. Jagadguru Srila Prabhupada ki, Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki. I a little bit changed my style of discussion or reading the morning for this chapter because very, very important chapter. I wanted you also to read the purports and also a little bit highlight the verses. When we can speed up, we'll speed up. Now the next section will speed up because it's all about yajna. We know which yajna to perform. Harinam Sankirtan yajna. So we'll speed up. It'll be like driving a Ferrari on a race course. And then we'll come to the last section. What is the last section? Tadviti Pranipatina. There we might need some time and attention. With that, thank you all for joining us for today morning reading. I broke the rule. I went 5 minutes ahead. Thank you for bearing with me. It's time to prepare for the next program. Then 8 o'clock we have Bhagavatam class.